For the last 10 months, in a unique project, this once deserted farm has been brought back to life, as it would have been in the 1880s.
Gee up!
Ruth Goodman, Peter Ginn, and Alex Langlands have been living the lives of Victorian farmers, from the depths of winter to the warmth of summer, turning the clock back to rediscover an age gone by. They've restored the farm under the watchful eye of their landlord, Thomas Stackhouse Acton.
I think it's slightly tilted.
And experienced life without modern conveniences.
Bathing in a room with no central heating. It's pretty cold.
Successfully bred Victorian breeds of poultry, sheep,
Two friends, look at those.
cattle and pigs.
A little curious and fluffy and cute and cuddly.
But the dreadful June weather devastated the hay harvest.
It's not cutting, is it?
No, it's not.
It's so wet as well. I mean, look, Peter's wringing it out there.
For the Victorian farmer, this is a disaster, leaving him no hay store to feed the animals over winter.
Rain, 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 rain.
Let's hope it doesn't affect the wheat, eh?
Now it's late summer, and the year-long project is almost at an end. But first, the team faces their biggest challenge yet, the wheat harvest. Only a bumper wheat crop can offset the failure of the hay harvest. First, they must make some urgent repairs to their cart.
Water.
Then get to grips with cutting-edge technology, Victorian style.
We've had a blockage, and Brian's just going around the machine to try and work out what it is.
But most importantly, they need a break in the rain.
We've only got a very small window between now and when those clouds come over.
A failed wheat crop could mean the workhouse for a Victorian farmer. It's early July. The wheat was planted back in September and has survived the harsh winter weather, as well as attacks by pheasants and rabbits. Now it needs to ripen from green to the familiar golden colour.
Wow, this is amazing. This really is. It's a bit of a dream come true, this. This is actually probably better than I expected. But with harvest maybe 4 to 6 weeks away, weather depending, we've still got so many things that could go wrong. If we don't get the harvest right, we cut it too late, it's too dry. You know, if we cut it too soon, it's too green, it won't thresh. Fingers crossed, I'll get it right and I won't look like too much of an idiot.
If it's harvested at the right time, the wheat grain from the heads will be sold to make flour for bread. But wheat must be dry before it can be cut. If rain delays the harvest, all it will be fit for is animal feed. This acre of wheat would take our farmers a week of back-breaking work to harvest by hand. But in the 1880s came this, the horse-drawn reaper binder. As its name suggests, it not only cuts the wheat, but binds it into sheaves too, harvesting an acre in as little as an hour.
What a contraption. It's amazing, isn't it? It's like something out of a Wallace and Gromit movie, isn't it? All these gadgets and levers and wheels and cogs.
What, the cutting face down there, the blade's going across, so it takes the wheat up and spits it out the other side, bound somehow.
So this is the real labour-saving device. It means that we don't have to run around the field, bunching all this stuff up and tying it ourselves.
Putting this Victorian contraption back in action is going to be no mean feat. So local farmer Mr. Thomas and his son Brian have offered to help.
Now, you've used one of these, haven't you?
Yeah, my father had. Yes, I've used one of these several years, and with horses.
With horses?
Oh, yes. 1936 when I started using one like. And we went on into the 50s. Yes.
Winding her down into her working position, approximately. Keep going till them wheels is off the ground. That's it. Yeah, you're going down now, lovely. She's quite heavy, isn't she?
She is, yeah. Do you prefer working with horses or tractors?
Oh, it's a lot easier with tractors.
Was it?
It was. You would get on the seat and ride all day.
So what's the next job then?
We're going to put the knife in now. Alex will bring him round to us. We'll pop him in.
Be very careful of that, it's sharp.
Yeah.
Right. Right, so we're ready to cut now, are we?
No. Got to get the string in.
We've got to have the string in and thread
Right,
it through the
okay.
needle and through the knot.
String's in here,
Yes.
and it's got to end up where Alex is.
This ingenious knotter ties the cut wheat into bundles.
There, exactly, yes.
Invented in 1857 by an 18-year-old Wisconsin farmhand, it was a revolutionary breakthrough.
Tensioner.
Have you done this job before, Peter, or not?
No, I've never
haven't,
done
no.
this before.
Well, you're quite a professional at it. I think you seem to
Thank you very
got this
much.
completely under control.
So I think I might need to pass over to you, Alex.
Yes,
Okay.
Alex, yes. Lift the hatch and just get down in there.
You'll see it coming through there now, Alec.
Can you
Set that hole
I
there.
see that.
Hatch up.
Yeah,
You've got
I've
the
got
hatch
that.
up.
Right, okay.
And it's basically like a giant sewing machine, this
That's
mechanism,
right.
here,
Right.
isn't it?
This is the most complicated
Yes.
part of the whole procedure.
Right. Pull a bit more out, Shirley. You haven't got enough through.
A little bit more there.
That's better.
Right.
Yeah.
Hold it tight.
And Peter's going to turn over manually just to check
Yes.
see if it
Right.
works okay.
Here it comes.
Yes. Oh, no.
Oh no.
No, it's clear.
Yeah, shouldn't be a problem there, Peter.
Let's try it again then. Let's
it again.
let's pull that.
It shouldn't make any difference. Well,
When was this machine last used? Have you any idea?
Maybe we should try it then with a.
Yes.
You think with a sheave?
yeah, I should put the straw in it.
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
Shave.
Okay.
On there, basically. Yes, ready to go.
Yes.
Yes, she tied it, yes.
And we have a shove tied.
Yes.
Look.
Excellent.
Lovely.
Look at
All
that.
knotted up properly, see?
Yeah.
That's brilliant. That is going to
that's
save
really
us
good.
an enormous amount of time.
Really good.
So is it good to see this working again after so many years?
Oh, yes. It's very nice to see it working, like the boy said. Yes. But I wouldn't like to go out and work with it all day now.
No.
Straw, the stem of the wheat plant, will be a byproduct of the harvest once the valuable grain is removed. Ruth is keen to put it to good use. Local craft expert Anne Dyer is visiting the farm to teach Ruth straw plaiting.
Hello!
Hello.
How to meet you.
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. I see you brought straw.
Yes.
Most of my female ancestors, if you go back into the Victorian period, were straw platters. The men were labourers and the women were
Well,
straw
it should
platters.
be in your hands, my dear.
Oh, I hope so.
I've started a bit because it's easier to plait once it's begun. And you know it has to be kept slightly damp.
No,
Otherwise
I
it'll
didn't.
crack.
Oh, right.
And when
okay.
it's, look how pliable that is.
And that doesn't make it rot then, just being
Nope.
wet all the time?
Well, think of the English weather.
Yeah, that is a point.
Now, you've got 7 straws. So you've got 4 on one side and 3 on the other. And you're going to keep moving one to the other side, and whichever side you've got most on is the side you plait from. So it's easy, you can't lose yourself.
I bet I can. Oh, you made it look so easy. Hang on.
Ah, well, it's a few hundred miles of plaiting. It improves the thing. That's right. Now keep them at right angles.
This is addictive. You don't have to do this sitting down, do
No,
you?
no. A bag on one arm to put the finished plait in, and your bundle of damp straws under your arm.
And you can go walkabout.
Yeah.
So you get these groups of young women behaving just like teenage gangs on street corners do today, intimidating everybody who walks past. And nobody could really shout at them because they were earning good money. They were working.
When you've got your 50-yard bundle, and you can sell it.
Sell it.
And you've got money for the groceries. Now, you know how to plait, you know how to sew, so you know everything you need.
Everything I
and
need.
brought my husband's hat
Oh my
to
goodness.
see.
So a hat is just like, it's just a spiral of
Yeah.
straw, plait.
And then you sew it as you go.
So you're not moulding it over anything, you're just bending it
No.
in your hands.
And a skilled person would get a perfect shape.
I thought there was all sorts of clever machinery. So how much of this do I have to make before I can make a hat?
Depends how big the hat is, of course. But just a nice little small one, probably about 15 yards, 20 yards.
15 yards for a small hat.
Yeah.
And I've done 3 inches.
Yes.
I really want to have a real proper go at this. We've got all this straw out in the field. There's no excuse.
Yes, yes.
To carry the harvested wheat from the field, the Victorian farmers need a cart, or dray. But theirs has lain unused for decades, and Peter is unsure of the condition of its wheels. So he's visiting Mike Wright, the wheelwright, for advice.
How are you?
Hello, Peter.
We've got a wheat harvest that we want to bring in, and for that we're going to use our dray. But I've had a look at it and the wheels are a bit wobbly. I was wondering if you could come as a wheelwright and cast your expert eye over it.
Yeah.
The thing is, I know so little about wheelwrighting. I'd love a quick sort of demonstration, actually.
All right, yes. Well, obviously we start with the hub and work outwards to the spokes and the fellies, which are the wooden rim around the side.
Right.
The hub is made of elm because elm's got a very twisted grain and it doesn't split easily when the spokes are driven into it.
Right, OK.
The spokes are made of oak for strength.
Yeah, so all the power of the wheel, the weight, is just transferred down the grain.
Yeah. The rim of the wheel, or felloes as they're called.
Fellows, right.
They're made of ash. So there's 3 different woods. You've got elm, oak and ash.
Ash is quite flexible, isn't it?
That's the reason that it's used. It takes the shocks of the road better than anything else. Once we've got that on, we've got to make sure all these tongues are engaged.
Right.
And then tap them up gradually all the way around, close all the joints.
Well, this looks pretty complete as a wheel, but you don't use glue or nails, so how do you hold it all together?
Well, we hold it together with the metal tyre that goes around the outside.
Right.
This is made smaller than the wheel.
OK.
And it's normally heated to red hot so that it expands sufficiently to go over the wheel, and then cooled quickly so that it shrinks and pulls all the joints up tight and holds the whole wheel under tension. And
so this would be red hot as it was going on?
Absolutely, yeah.
And then it would start to cool?
Yeah, and draw these joints up tight.
And there we have a wheel.
Yeah, and you can see it's quite...
And that tyre really ties it all together, doesn't it?
That's right, it's a very effective way of clamping up the whole wheel.
I have to say, on our dray, there's a bit of a gap, actually. It's not as tight as this, so it might be the tyre that's a problem. That's it.
Actually, we need to lift it a bit more, really, but that'll do it. This one, the tyre is a little bit loose, so I think we need to take that one off and re-tyre it.
Yeah, the last thing we want is our dray to fall apart.
As the year on the farm draws to a close, Ruth is keen to try something different in the Victorian kitchen.
Curries were really popular in Victorian Britain. All the recipe books are full of them. Indeed, the first curry house was opened in London in 1811. This one calls for powdered ginger, turmeric and cayenne pepper, all of which were relatively cheap. So now I've coated the chicken pieces in my curry powder, my mix of spices. They're to be browned or fried in butter, along with lots of onion and garlic. I'm just popping the chicken into the melted butter, and I shall brown those off. Now, back on the stove. And you find recipes in Mrs. Beeton, in Mrs. Rundle, Eliza Acton, and also the Family Save All, using leftovers, using a huge variety of meats, fish, even curried eggs. They're nice, I like curried eggs. Curries are also one of the few times in which the Victorian recipes include garlic. It's only supposed to be the 1 clove, so let's make the most of it. Right, I've got my stock pot here. I've just got some chicken stock and just go straight in. These are the onions that have been cooked through, browned off in the rest of the butter and spices, and they go in too. And then in my marrow. And this is all going to stew down now for about 45 minutes to an hour, and it'll reduce as it does, so that the stock combining with the spices will make the sauce.
This is our dray tyre.
Just taking it round to the forge.
The metal tyre's been removed, repaired, and is ready to go back onto the wooden wheel.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Peter.
Well, I've got the tyre.
All right. So it'll drop over like that.
Right.
You can see it's too small to go over at the moment.
Yeah.
But when it's hot, hopefully it'll be big enough to drop over.
So when it gets hot, it'll expand.
It'll expand.
Bigger in the wheel.
Yeah.
And then it contracts and clamps.
Yeah. 100 years ago, we would have been using the Shrewsbury Chronicle, not the Shropshire Star. Plenty of sticks around the outside, wigwam fashion.
Right.
Fill up all the gaps so that the wind can't get into it.
We're now going to light our fire. Feeling a bit nervous about this, actually.
There's nothing to it.
Take your word for it.
Let the air get to it a bit more yet.
I have to say, I'm starting to feel my eyes beginning to melt.
Yeah, I think it's
getting hot.
It's time to move back a little bit, I think.
Yeah. Seriously, the heat of this fire, I cannot exaggerate how intense this heat is. In an effort to retain my facial hair, and I have had it burnt off before, I'm just putting a bit of water on my face and my hands. So that just gives me a little bit of extra protection against the fire when I go in with the tongs. So I'll keep my eyelashes, I'll keep my eyebrows, and I'll keep my beard. And unlike Mike, I'll keep my hair.
You ready, Peter?
I'm ready. We've got to go for it now.
Grab one of these.
Of the essence. Just raking the fire off the top of the tyre.
One on.
One on.
Hang on. Oh, ready? Ready?
Ready. Joint on the middle.
Yeah. Okay. Right, push yours out. Knock it down with a hammer this side. Hang on, wait.
Do you want to...
Water.
Just evenly applying water here. This is just shrinking the tyre into place. As you can see by the water boiling, as soon as it hits the tyre, it's still red hot.
There's actually so much of a gap around the outside. I didn't think actually it was never going to close up, but it is starting to close up now.
It is. And it's after the water touches it, it's still bone dry. That was very, very intense. Are you happy with that, Mike?
Yeah, it seems fine. It's still quite warm to the touch.
Yeah, it is. The water did work on my face, although now it's been replaced with a sheen of sweat. Right, one wheel, one cart jack. This is the wheel we've retired, and Mike's very kindly helping me put it back on the dray.
That'll do.
Wonderful.
And we just slip the wheel on.
And now the linchpin.
Position. Wheel on.
Wheel on.
Yep.
Hopefully this means that we'll have a working dray for our wheat harvest. Right, that's up. Trestle out.
Trestle out. Wheel down.
Right,
Job done.
With both the dray and reaper binder up and running, Peter and Alex head back to the cottage to plan the harvest with Ruth. Over a curry.
Smells very good.
Curry always smells good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I never thought on this Victorian farm we'd be sitting down to curry.
Curry. Oh, it's really popular.
Good old Victorians.
They were quite cosmopolitan in their food. I mean, if you go through Eliza Acton's recipe book, you can find food from about 20 different countries.
Well, they're quite cosmopolitan in what they called the British Empire.
Well, exactly. What are we going to do about harvest then? I mean, even with a reaper binder, we're going to need quite a lot of extra labour, aren't we?
Yes. I suppose you'll want less than you would do if you were doing it entirely by hand, but more than you would do if you were doing it with modern equipment.
Yeah.
But then if we do have help, we should really have a party to say thank you.
A harvest supper.
And equally, it's the end of our year here.
So it would be nice to say thank you to people, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we can't afford to pay people much, so how on earth are we going to...
Well, I think we're going to have to pay them with the party. And the party's got to consist of good food, good beer and good music. OK, good food, reasonably passable homebrew and good music.
So you're going to have a crack at some beer then?
I think we should have a crack at some beer.
OK.
Also, how many Victorian farm labourers are wandering around in the 21st century, so...
There might be quite difficult to come by.
Well, yeah, they might be, mightn't they? So how are we going to get them to come then?
Do you think poster?
We could get a poster.
Advert?
It was a very Victorian thing to do, advertise. In print, you know, in print, isn't it? I mean, there are adverts for everything, everywhere.
First great age of advertising.
Yeah.
So they say. Apparently farmers could read.
Well, yeah.
I might learn soon. So when are you opening your curry house?
It's all right, isn't it?
It's delicious.
Very sort of English curry, but...
To attract help with the harvest, Peter and Alex are making beer, Victorian style. The first job is to heat malted barley in water.
Oh, smells delicious, doesn't it?
Yeah, that smells fantastic.
It's like Ovaltine, isn't it?
Yeah.
Malt drink, hot milk drink. Hot malt drink. I'm getting tipsy just making it.
We need to keep that temperature at that 150 degrees, and we need to do that for 2 hours. The temperature is critical, because if it's too much, it kills the enzymes, and if it's too little, the enzymes won't work. But 150 degrees Fahrenheit, the enzymes will release sugars from the barley into the water to create the sugar water, which is the wort. Basically, this sugar is what the yeast feeds on, and that reaction creates the alcohol.
Back in the Victorian period, you were very much responsible for providing not only for the sort of financial needs of your labourers, but also for their refreshments as well. And if you brewed a good beer, there's a very good chance that you get all the best labourers.
That smells absolutely lovely.
It does. And it's holding its temperature well, or at least it has done now, and it's been pushing 3 hours.
Yeah, it should be fine. Well, big problem now is straining it into the cauldron.
Okay.
Because you'd normally have a hole in the bottom and stuff it with straw.
Right.
But obviously our wooden vessel leaked, so we couldn't use that. I found this.
Is that what I think it is?
Top of Ruth's chamber pot.
Is it? I hope you've given it a thorough cleaning. Let's go for it.
Go for this.
Just don't tell anyone. If that has been used in anger, I think you might want to give it a slightly more thorough rinse.
I'll pop it in the cauldron. Sterilisation begins. Nobody will ever know.
While the boys battle with the beer, Ruth heads off to a printer's shop in nearby Blist Hill.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And how can I help you?
I've come to order a poster, if possible, please,
Yes,
to put up.
What sort of size are we looking at?
Oh, I don't know, sort of poster size.
Okay, yeah.
It's for the farm, for Glebe Farm.
Glebe Farm, yes.
And we want some harvest help. Now, the boys think that we might have trouble getting labourers, so they said we've got to make this poster really attractive. They suggested we put something like, that the best beer around was on...
That certainly attract them in. The best beer around. Here we have our cases of type. This case here contains all the capital letters, and this one here contains all those small letters. So printers often call this the uppercase and the lowercase letter.
Oh, I see, that's what it means.
So what we do is,
I see.
we're going to set the word Glebe Farm here. So we pick up a G from the compartment and put it into our stick. Now, what it is, you hold the stick in your left hand and you work away from your body. So we're going to put the next one is the L. So we're following it to each one, L, E, B. We're in the lowercase here.
Yeah.
Right, so we've done the word glebe. We need to put spacing material in here, so we're putting 2 pieces of space material, and then we're going to do the word farm. Capital F, again, that uppercase, F, A, R, M. So there you are. We've now completed our type. Now, it looks as if it's upside down, but when you turn the stick around like that, you can actually see that it is backwards.
Right. And so when you were doing that, you were spelling it out in order. You weren't trying to spell it backwards, were you?
No.
Oh, that'll make it so much easier.
Yeah, this is where the poor old apprentice often got this wrong. If we have a look at this, this is a name of our shop. This was done by an apprentice who simply started the wrong end of the stick, or got the wrong end of the stick.
Oh, I see. So that's where the staying comes from, getting the wrong end of the stick, starting the wrong end.
Yeah. So he's put these coins in.
The 19th century saw the first great age of advertising, and almost all of it was in printed form. As well as posters, masses of printed leaflets, junk mail, flowed through the Victorian postal system.
You're going to have to use all your strength. That's half a ton of pressure. Let's see how we've done with your first poster.
Oh, talk about half a ton of pressure. Look how that's come through.
There.
Oh, fantastic! Great. Right, well, I'll just get these stuck up round the village, I think.
I suppose as Victorians, if we got good at brewing beer, we could invest in the proper kit.
Back at the cottage, the malted barley is filtered from the water, drop by drop.
This is tedious.
It is a bit, isn't it?
But we can always just tip it through the, I was going to say the pillowcase. Genius idea. Let's innovate. I'll nick this off Ruth's bed. And pour it in there. Necessity is the mother of all invention. That's good, I think. Leave that at that. Pillowcase seems to be waterproof.
I think put the hops in here.
We've still got to drain it though, haven't we? We've still got to drain the water out at some point.
I think at this rate we're going to be lucky if we've got any beer for harvest.
Don't say that.
Eventually, the barley's filtered out. Next, it's time to flavour the beer.
This is going to give it the bitterness and also the hoppy taste.
Yep. But we're going for the bitter-sweet, aren't we?
We are. Summer beer and all that.
Put in some honey.
Brilliant. Some honey.
Yeah, well, we've got so much of it at the moment.
Honey's the only ingredient in the world that doesn't go off in its raw form. This is our yeast. So I'm just going to put this into the beer. And I'll just stir the yeast into the wort. And the wort is sugar water, and the yeast feeds off of that sugar. And the result of that is alcohol. So this is it. This is now beer. It is in the lap of the gods. There's nothing more we can do for this. Hey piggies. This is the barley from our brew. And one of the things Victorian farmers would have done with it is feed it to the pigs, because pigs pretty much eat anything. And look at them, they are really, really tucking in. I mean, malted barley, it's like Maltesers. It's like Ovaltine, it's a malt extract, it's lovely. And they're absolutely scoffing it.
With the piglets weaned, it's time they were fattened for slaughter. In just a few weeks, the team will leave, so Merle Wilson from a local farm has come to collect the pigs.
Oh, hi Merle.
Anybody back?
Hi, how are you?
Not so bad. They're very good, aren't they?
They are, they're lovely. Absolutely lovely.
Have you just weaned them?
Yeah, pretty much. What are you going to do with them?
Well, I think I'm going to fatten some up, see what they're like, because we haven't had Gloucester old spots before. But I'm going to keep one female to breed from.
Right. Right, should we take them over?
Yeah, do you think they'll follow?
Yeah, I think so. Come on, pigs.
So I suppose you'll miss these pigs, will you?
Immensely. More than you'll know, I suppose. Yeah, this is goodbye. This is it, really.
But that's the way farming.
I know. It is the way of farming.
If they've had a good life, that's the main thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I better get behind them. Come on. Pig, 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 pig. Come on. Come on. Come on, boys, you've got a long walk. Come on.
Come on.
Pig,
Come on,
pig,
pigs.
pig, 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 pig. Pig, 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 pig.
As well as the nurtured wheat crop, the nearby hills of the Long Mynd have their own natural harvest. Windberries.
This is a place where, in the summer, women and children came to pick a free harvest, a free cash crop, actually. Had quite a good commercial value. I'm picking, well, locally they're called windberries. Much of Britain they're called bilberries. Windberries are pretty much the same thing as American blueberries. Oddly, many British people know American blueberries and don't know our own native version. Our native version is a little bit smaller, but I think it tastes nicer. In the 19th century, this whole moorland was managed for grouse, and they would burn sections of it year after year to take the big vegetation out and allow fresh young growth to come. And that, incidentally, by the by, is really good conditions for the windberry bushes to grow. So you get this huge berry harvest all over the tops of these hills. You don't have to plant anything, you don't have to weed anything, you don't have to fertilise anything, you don't need any machines, it's just there, free. And what made it commercially viable, as opposed to just, you know, local produce for local people, is the railway down at the bottom, which meant that great big baskets and crates full of windberries could be whisked off to London, where you could get really good money from the restaurant trade.
As July ends, the wheat is turning golden and will soon be ready to harvest. The harvest will be the culmination of their year as Victorian farmers.
It's been a fabulous year, but it's going to be a wrench having to leave this farm. And one thing I really have learnt is that farming isn't a job. Farming is a lifestyle, and it is totally engaging.
We'll be back in the real world soon, and I don't know how I'm going to react to having to go back to modern living. I've enjoyed Victorian farming so much, so it's going to be quite a shock to the system. But of course, we've still got the wheat harvest to do, and you know, I'm very anxious about that. What with the weather at the moment.
The wheat must be dry, otherwise the reaper binder will jam. But the prospects aren't good. The summer's been one of the wettest for years. Despite anxieties about the weather, the preparations for the harvest are going well. The posters are up around the village, so hopefully they'll get some much-needed help. The horse-drawn dray and reaper binder are set to go, and Ruth's beginning preparations for the Harvest Festival, making windberry jam.
Windberries don't have very much pectin, which is the thing that makes the jam set. So I'm going to use some apple peel and apple cores to produce some pectin. So all I've got to do is take all my corings and my peelings and let them simmer in some water, and then the water will become the water that I make my jam with. And hey presto, a set will occur. Pectin is something which occurs naturally in lots of fruit, and when you boil it up, the liquid and the pectin react with the acids in the fruit and it turns into a jelly. I'm going to put all the peelings in a cloth, just makes it easier with the straining afterwards. And I'll just pop that on the range and boil it for a couple of hours. Last of my windberries. All the fruit in top of my nice pectin-y water. And I need to weigh the sugar. And as with most jam, it's basically the same amount of sugar as fruit. Earlier centuries, sugar had been expensive and jam had been a luxury product. But with slavery and new machines in the sugar refineries and better transport bringing the sugar back, sugar had become a cheap mass ingredient in Britain. So bread and jam was something that many a person who couldn't afford a joint of mutton turned to.
The sheep have been one of the great success stories of this Victorian farm. The initial flock of 10 has grown to 26. Back in April, Alex sowed them a nutritious pasture to graze, using grasses developed in the Victorian era. But with a year on the farm drawing to a close, it's time for them to be taken away by sheep farmer Richard Spencer.
So what do you think of some of these lambs then, Richard?
Well, you've got one or two outstanding specimens there. There's one of those ewe lambs. It's an absolute beauty. It's as good as anything I've bred this year. I'm very impressed with what you've done.
Richard's also impressed by Alex's pasture.
Good thick bite of grass there. See the clovers come through. Well, those deep-rooted plants, they'll get down and pull the trace elements up. Your sheep couldn't wish for better. And it's just what you need to sort of get these lambs to finish. I'm very impressed, Alex. I'm very impressed. Well done, Pete.
Thank you very much.
Richard's advised enclosing the sheep in a small area and moving it every day.
This is a valuable feed for your sheep. Right. And if you put them on here, they'll come in here hungry, they'll eat it down, then tomorrow you'll move them on to the next piece. And also, with them being on continually fresh grazing, which in effect it is, there's no chance for a parasite problem to develop. Right. Let's just have a look and see what the conditions are like on the back. So we're going to catch one of those lambs and we're going to see what it feels like, and we'll see if it's ready for the butcher.
Jolly good.
Are you ready? Let's go for it. Oh, that's the one. Go, man, go, 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 go. Where are you, Alex? Good grief, young man. Youth. Youth and enthusiasm are no match for age and treachery. Dear goodness gracious me.
He's a tough one, isn't he?
I won't, you know, that will do. That will do. I won't tell your mother.
He's a tough
right,
fellow,
this is just about right. You put your hands on there.
Yep.
Right across there,
right.
where mine are.
Yep.
You can feel the meat. It's about like that.
Oh, yeah.
Right, if you put your hands there,
yep.
That is wonderful. That is solid meat in there. That is a very nice lamb, actually. It's not wool, it's firm flesh.
Yeah.
I'm quite impressed with that. You've got some absolutely wonderful lambs there. There's always one or two that aren't as good as the others. It's a fact of life. I mean, I was a run to the litter, but I survived.
So we'd stand up then as Victorian shepherds.
You would. Oh, absolutely.
Hold our own.
Absolutely.
Thank you ever so much, Richard.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Well done, Alex. Well done, Pete. Well done.
Back at the farm, Ruth has been bitten by the straw plaiting bug.
This straw plaiting has really turned out to be addictive. I find myself doing it all the time. And it's quite nice using our straw. And look, I've nearly finished it. Actually looks like a hat! I'm so pleased with it. When I started sewing it together, I thought, well, you know, if I just make a disc shape, that'd be something. But as I sort of worked it just sort of happened and came together. It's quite fetching. Ding, on top of head. I think really though, if I want to be Victorian, I ought to wear it with a big bow, sort of tied round, and then it should come under my chin, which pushes the hat into a different shape, sort of bit like that.
It's the 1st of August. Known as Lammas Day, this was traditionally the start of the wheat harvest season. If the next few days stay dry, this will be the best time to reap the crop. To celebrate Lammas Day, Alex and Peter are ringing the church bells under the watch of Warden Edward Jones.
Well, we've had a few practices, and I think last night we were sort of almost there, weren't we?
Did very well last night.
Almost.
We're going to get it right today.
Yes, we are indeed.
And you're going to ring the tenor bell, Peter. That's the heaviest bell, 1/2 ton weight.
Wonderful.
Rupert's on the treble, the first bell, and Alex on the middle bell.
Right, so I'll set the pace with the treble bell, and I'll try and keep it as slow as possible, because I'm aware that your bell is the heaviest.
And we have to try and keep up with each other.
That's right. Look to treble going, treble gone.
Really just trying to concentrate on getting a nice even ring. All the while I'm watching Rupert so that my Sally's going just after his, which it isn't at the moment.
Making quite a racket in there, aren't they?
They're doing a wonderful job.
Professor Ronald Hutton is an expert in British rituals.
What exactly is it that they're doing?
Well, you ring the bells twice, traditionally. You ring the bells at Lammas, the loaf mass, which is the 1st of August, to announce the beginning of the harvest. And then in this parish, you'd ring the bells at the end of harvest to announce the fact it was over for everybody. This is a relatively new custom. It's part of the Harvest Festival, which doesn't come in until the 1840s to the 1860s.
Oh, right.
And that's to get over the commercialisation of agriculture in the early 19th century. More and more harvest hands are accepting extra cash instead of a harvest supper, which makes sense, but it doesn't loosen that sense of community. So what happens instead is the entire parish gets together to have a general harvest celebration when everybody's finished reaping.
Oh, that's quite
Everybody
nice,
pays a bit
isn't it?
towards it, and it restores that sense of an organic community. And it works so well, we're still doing it.
How did we do them, Mr. Jones?
Well, it wasn't too bad. There's room for improvement.
It's harvest time. The rain's held off and the wheat is dry enough to cut. Local farmer Brian Davis and his daughter Sharon have come to drive the reaper binder. Powered by 3 horses, it cuts and ties the wheat into sheaves, doing the job of dozens of workers.
Such an amazing piece of kit.
That is just tremendous.
I was hoping it would work.
But it's just so fast. Whoosh!
But with just one row done, the reaper binder comes to a shuddering halt.
Back! 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 Back!
We've had a blockage. Brian's just going around the machine to try and work out what it is.
And there's another problem brewing on the horizon. Rain.
You want to take it out of gear, Brian?
A downpour now will threaten the whole harvest.
The problem here is we've only got a very small window between now and when those clouds come over. We really don't want to get caught in a thunderstorm.
We'll play back a bit, Alex. I can't be in here. Oh, yes.
So it's the lantern that's locked up. It's going now. So it was a blockage.
Yeah, blockage on the knife.
Go.
Gee up!
Weeds amongst the crop caused the jam. But with a storm closing in, they can't afford another hitch. Time for urgent action.
We were desperately keen to try and avoid this kind of harvesting. This really is sort of early 19th century style harvesting, all by hand. But the reason we've had to do this is because we fertilised this patch along here, and what we've really done is we've fertilised the weeds as well. And one of the weeds that we've got in here is a field vetch, and that is a real pain to farmers. So what we're going to do is just clean ourselves a nice kind of swathe through here, if you like.
With the weeds cleared, the reaper binder can cut without risk of jamming. In less than an hour, the job's done, and only just in time.
Well, here comes the rain. Hopefully it won't be too much of a heavy shower, but it doesn't look good, does it?
This has been probably one of the most stressful things. After the disaster of the hay crop because of the weather, we just, you know, this has just been so stressful.
That was pretty quick, but I think stooking is going to take us a bit of time.
It is.
And the rain's
children
coming.
to give us a hand,
We can get everyone we can get.
They're loitering there with intent. You're going to help us stook?
Yeah?
We need to do it really fast.
Ruth's poster hasn't produced any harvest labourers yet, so it's all hands on deck.
Right, we need one more.
It's really important that we upend and stook all the wheat so that the wheat is up in the air where it can be dried. If we left it down on the ground, it would start to rot. Up like this, it can dry out, plenty of air around it, and hopefully dry before any mould gets to it. Whew, that was a badly stooked stook, wasn't it?
You'd make a good farmer, you would.
It's now raining. If this had happened before, we couldn't have cut it. I mean, it's a miracle.
Come on, Peter, get on with it, lad.
But not all the wheat is cut and stooked. A small clump remains. Professor Ronald Hutton has returned to the farm to explain a strange Victorian ritual.
Late Victorian scholars themselves thought that a spirit lived in the corn, in which ancient peoples believed. And of course, as you cut more and more of the crop, the spirit retreats into the last bit. So that particular stand of crop is infused with this vital element that's actually quite dangerous, and that's why you dare not approach too close. You fling things from afar, or you try and get it blindfold. That's the mystical interpretation.
That sounds very Victorian.
But Professor Hutton believes that there's a much simpler explanation for the ritual.
Harvesting a crop, as you've discovered, is really difficult work, and so everyone's really elated when you get to the end of it, and you want to make a big thing of it.
I'd like to be the first to volunteer Ruth.
I hope you don't need your ankles in the future.
There we go.
Now we're all just going to pop down the pump. And you let us know when you've finished.
Turn Ruth round a few times and give her the scythe and then take cover.
Oh.
One.
Oh, it's like dancing this. It's very nice.
It is very elegant.
3.
Oh, whoa, that's a stoop.
That's a stoop.
That was 12 o'clock. You want 6 o'clock. Another stoop, Ronald. It's behind you.
Okay, behind it. Right.
Hit hard.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so rubbish at this.
No, you're not.
With the last of the wheat cut, it's time to celebrate.
All over the British Isles, the last sheaf is given a name. The maiden, the crone, the baby, the hare. In Shropshire, it's called the mare. Don't know why.
Oh.
That's its nickname. And what you do is you shout, "I have her, I have her, I have her," in a Shropshire accent. And we three guys shout, "What hast thee, what hast thee, what hast thee?" And you shout, "A mare, a mare, a mare." You want to try that?
Okay, so I have her, I have her, I have her.
What hast thee, what hast thee, what hast thee?
A mare, a mare, a mare.
Wonderful.
Well done.
They'd have heard that in the neighbouring farm, who won't have finished their harvesting, and you will feel great at having shown them up.
Marbu, sucks to you.
So what do I do with this now then?
Well, in Shropshire, you probably wouldn't have made it into a corn dolly.
Oh.
They do that elsewhere.
Right.
So you stick it up in your house as a trophy. You can plait it, you can put ribbons in it, you can put flowers in it. You do what makes you feel good about having done so well. It's your achievement.
The farmers must now wait 3 weeks for the sheaves of wheat to dry out before they can be brought in from the field. If they're stored damp, they'll rot. There's no clever Victorian machine to do this job, so plenty of extra labour will be needed. Fingers crossed Ruth's poster works. While they wait, it's time for Peter, Ruth and Alex to move out of the farm where they've lived as Victorians for the past year.
It's truly a life-enhancing experience, maybe even a life-altering experience. It's going to be very, very hard to leave this place. Very hard indeed.
The final job on the Victorian farm is to bring in the harvest. In the wheat field, there's been an excellent response to Ruth's poster, and there's no shortage of help.
We've managed to enlist an army of Victorian labourers to help us load our dray. The only problem is Peter and I have never done this before.
As with most things.
Looks like the poster worked. We seem to have got loads of people to give us a hand.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
How's it going, Peter?
That's going very well. Like, many hands make light work. Thank you very much. I think we might just get it all on.
We're just using the sort of time-honoured implement of the rural scene, the piko, or pitchfork as it's more popularly known. And it quite literally, what it does is just pitches stuff up to us.
Thrashing before.
Oh, at last a bit of sun, eh, Ruth?
Yeah. Eventually.
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 The way we're stacking this dray is we're putting it stalk side out, because that means the head of the grain is in the middle of the dray, so if you lose any, it's still on your dray.
With all the stooks loaded, it's time for gleaning, collecting any stray stalks of wheat left in the field.
For very poor families, this was deeply important to their yearly economy. If you were good at gleaning and you followed the fields from farm to farm, you could get several months' worth of bread corn for free.
The 19th century saw the birth of photography, for the first time accurately illustrating everyday rural scenes like this. Today, these images give us a window into a lost age. Photographer Chris Vile has come to the farm to take a picture of our harvest with a Victorian plate camera.
Hi, Chris. Thanks ever so much for coming along.
No trouble.
Why would photographers be so interested then in harvesting, this sort of everyday activity?
The majority of photographers' work was undoubtedly taking portraits, but two things had changed. A, the materials have become much cheaper and more mass-produced. But I think also photographers in the early days saw themselves often as artists, and they're in that sort of romantic tradition. And maybe as a reaction to the sort of increasing industrialisation of the countryside that we're seeing, they wanted to capture that rural life.
Right. Stand still for a few seconds.
Last September, the team threshed wheat, removing grain to be sold to make bread. Now they're leaving a wheat crop to be threshed by the next tenants of the farm. On the way to the farmyard, there's a steep hill to negotiate, a real test for the repaired wheel.
As we're going down the brow of the hill, we're attaching a slipper, which is going to brake the cart, so the cart isn't going to run away with the horses.
Oh, I feel as safe as houses up here.
Celebrating the end of harvest has been a custom across Europe ever since history began. It's a chance for the workers to be repaid with free-flowing beer and food, accompanied by folk musician John Kirkpatrick. For the poor, it's an opportunity to get decent food and beer. Mr. Acton and his son Rupert have been the Victorian Farm's landlords all year and have come along to join in the celebrations.
Mr. Acton! Mr. Acton, how lovely to come and join us. Oh, well, as you can see...
Mr. Acton?
A harvest!
And here is the last sheaf as well.
It looks a healthy sample.
It does. There's a little bit of weed in here. And we thought we'd leave that.
Can we offer you a drink? I didn't mean to slur that.
Now the moment of truth. Time to taste Peter's beer.
Jolly nice.
Be honest.
Quite an acceptable flavour.
Jolly good.
That is nice, Peter. All things considered, I think that's a damn good home brew, that.
You drinking the same beer as I am?
I think it's an opportunity as well to say a big thank you to everyone that helped us with the harvest today.
Yes.
So a big thanks to everyone.
Thank
Cheers.
you very much. Cheers.
And I've got one last very sad duty to do. I've got to give you that back.
That's very kind of you.
A very
Thank you
sad
very
moment
much.
for me.
The key to the cottage.
Well, I'm sure the cottage is in a lot better state now than it was when you arrived.
You might have the key, but we've changed the locks.
Squatter's rights.
Yes.
Now there came three men from the west, me boys, their fortunes for to try. And these three men made a solemn vow, John Barleycorn must die. So they ploughed in deep in the furrows, and they sowed right over his head. And these three men home rejoicing went, John Barleycorn was dead. To be right.
Victorian harvest festivals were notoriously boozy and uproarious affairs.
Over and over and over and over, drink up.
It's not long before the drinking games start.
And over till your liquor's drunk up, your hat is turned over. Over and over and over and over, drink up your liquor and turn your hat over. Over and over and over and over till your liquor's drunk up and your hat is
Cheers. I don't know what's more tiring, bringing in the harvest.
It's time to leave the Victorian farm and say goodbye to a way of life from an age gone by.
Been down.
We have poured our heart and soul into this project, and that's the reason why it's going to be so hard to leave.
One thing that stood out has been bringing new life into the world. And out of all that new life, I think the pigs are those I've been closest to.
These little Gloucester Old Spot piglets are now 5 days old.
As a historian and archaeologist, I've spent an inordinate amount of time reading about the past and excavating the past, but this was an opportunity to do it for real and just to have the insights into day-to-day country life back in the 19th century. How am I doing then?
You're doing very well.
I suppose if I had to pick out one thing that I've thoroughly enjoyed from this year, it's going to have been working with the heavy horses. Such a massive thrill to work with such graceful beasts, and it's certainly something I'll be looking to do when I leave the farm.
We've been really lucky too to have a chance to get involved in all the sort of crafts of the countryside, the things that you need to make and do to support life on a Victorian farm. I mean, the basket making was it was a joy to behold.
You do get a very real sense, though, of how in the kind of modern age we really have lost touch with the countryside. You know, just all the different types of wood and trees and plants and grasses that to Victorian farmers would have been second nature, but they're virtually alien to the kind of the people of today.
There's a huge weight of sadness about finishing doing all this. But then I'm also really excited because it's thrown up so many ideas.
Well, this is the end of our Victorian adventure. I'm going to really miss this place.